The alien warship loomed over the desolate battlefield, its sleek metallic hull reflecting the dying embers of war. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with arrogance. The Krex Dominion, a species known for their brutality, had just captured their latest human prisoner. They dragged her into the command hall, a dimly lit chamber with towering figures, Krex officers, warlords, and the Supreme General himself. A human girl, barely in her 20s, frail and bloodied, stood before them, bound in energy shackles. The Supreme General, Valoth, a towering beast of muscle and armored scales, stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with amusement. This is what humanity has to offer," he sneered, his deep voice echoing through the hall. The Krex officers laughed cruelly, their guttural chuckles filling the room. One of them, a brutish warrior named Skorigzul, stepped closer, examining the girl as if she were a fragile insect. "Look at her, so weak, so small. How did your kind ever survive this long?" he taunted. He reached out and flicked her forehead, making her head snap back slightly. The girl didn't react. She just stood there, silent, her head slightly tilted down. But something in the way she held herself, it was off. Valoth grinned, towering over her. "Tell me, human, do you even understand where you are? Do you grasp the futility of your existence?" Still, she said nothing. Another Krex officer chuckled. "Maybe she's already broken. Not much sport in that." Valoth raised a hand. "No, not broken. She's thinking, plotting, trying to act strong." He leaned down, so close she could feel his hot breath. "But it won't matter." Then, finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "You talk too much." The room fell silent. The Krex officers exchanged glances. Did she just mock their Supreme General? Valoth's grin twisted into a snarl. He grabbed her by the throat, lifting her off the ground effortlessly. Her feet dangled, but she didn't struggle. No fear, no begging. Only that same, unsettling calm. Then something unexpected happened. She smirked. Valoth's grip tightened. "You think this is funny, human?" Her eyes glowed, just for a split second. Then the lights in the command hall flickered. Valoth frowned. He turned to his officers. "Fix that power fluctuation." A Krex technician frantically tapped on a glowing control panel. "Yes, sir. I'm detecting an anomaly in her biosignatures." Valoth's eyes narrowed. "What anomaly?" The technician hesitated. Her vitals were weak when she arrived, but now, they're spiking. "Sir, it's almost like she's..." Boom. A pulse of invisible force exploded outward. The entire chamber shook violently. Krex officers stumbled backward. Energy shackles around her wrists shattered into dust. Valoth took an involuntary step back, his eyes wide. Impossible. The girl's breathing had changed. Slow, measured, controlled. The smirk had returned to her face. Then she rolled her shoulders, loosening her stiff muscles. "My turn." A deadly silence filled the chamber. The Krex warlords stood frozen, their laughter now long gone. The small, fragile-looking human girl they had mocked just moments ago was now free from her shackles. Her eyes glowed faintly, an eerie golden light flickering within them. Valoth clenched his fists. "Contain her. Now." 4 elite Krex warriors lunged forward, their massive armored bodies moving with deadly precision. Their energy blades hummed to life, blue plasma crackling along the edges. The girl moved. Fast. Too fast. Before the first warrior could swing, she sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and snapped his entire arm backward at an unnatural angle. A sickening crunch echoed through the hall. The Krex warrior howled in agony before she drove her knee into his chest, sending him flying into a wall. The second warrior swung down with his plasma blade. She twisted her body at the last second, the blade barely missing her by inches. In the same motion, she grabbed his weapon hand, forced it backward, and plunged the plasma blade into his own chest. The third and fourth warriors hesitated. They were afraid. A human, making Krek's warriors hesitate. This was impossible. Voloth roared in fury. "Kill her, you fools!" The third Krek's warrior rushed forward, this time more cautious. He feinted left, then unleashed a flurry of attacks, his plasma blade moving like lightning. The girl dodged each strike effortlessly. Not just dodging, but predicting. It was like she could see the attacks before they even happened. She caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted it, and ripped the plasma blade from his grip. Then, without hesitation, she flung the blade like a spear, straight into the fourth warrior's throat. The Krek's warlord gurgled, clutching at the burning plasma embedded in his neck before collapsing to the ground. The third warrior barely had time to react before she was on him, her fist slamming into his chest with a force that sent shockwaves through the room. He crashed into the floor, his ribs shattered. It had taken her less than 10 seconds to defeat 4 elite Krek's warriors. Voloth watched in stunned disbelief. "What are you?" She cracked her knuckles, tilting her head slightly. "Just a weak little human girl," she said mockingly, repeating their earlier words. A cold shiver ran down Voloth's spine. This wasn't normal. This wasn't possible. His species had fought humans for years, crushed their armies, obliterated their planets. But never had he seen something like this. She was beyond human. A Krek's technician frantically tapped his console, trying to scan her energy readings. His face twisted in horror. "Supreme General, her power levels are off the charts. She's not normal." Voloth snarled. He would not be humiliated by a single human. Not here. Not now. He grabbed his massive war axe, its glowing crimson blade humming with unstable energy. "Enough games," he growled, stepping forward. "You die now." The girl simply smiled. She raised a single hand. And then, the entire warship began to shake. The Krek's warship trembled, metal groaning under an unseen force. The dim red emergency lights flickered wildly as power surged through the corridors. Voloth tightened his grip on his war axe, his massive form casting a shadow over the human girl. "You will not leave this ship alive," he growled. The girl tilted her head, unconcerned. "Funny," she said, raising her hand slightly. "I was just about to say the same thing." Then everything happened at once. The warship's entire gravity field inverted for a split second. Krek's soldiers were ripped from the floor, slamming into the ceiling before crashing back down. Monitors exploded, sending sparks flying as power surges ran through the ship's systems. Voloth barely stayed on his feet. His warriors, however, were not so lucky. Dozens of them lay sprawled on the floor, dazed and struggling. The girl hadn't moved. She extended her fingers slightly, and the Krek's soldiers around her were lifted into the air as if by invisible hands. Their bodies twisted, limbs contorting against their will. Panic filled their alien eyes. Voloth roared, activating his war armor's energy shield. He lunged forward, swinging his massive war axe in a downward arc powerful enough to cleave through reinforced titanium. She vanished. No, she moved, faster than his eyes could follow. She reappeared behind him, her breath warm against his armored back. Too slow. Crack. She drove her fist into his side, and his armor shattered. Not dented, shattered, like brittle glass. Voloth staggered. Pain exploded through his ribs. This was impossible. No human, no species had this kind of strength. "Fire! Kill her!" one of the Krek's officers screamed. The entire room erupted in plasma fire. Hundreds of plasma bolts shot toward her. She didn't run. She didn't dodge. She walked straight through it. The bolts of energy bent around her, twisting midair as if the laws of physics no longer applied. Krek's warriors watched in horror as their own shots redirected toward them, striking down their own men. "Impossible." Voloth snarled, forcing himself back to his feet. "What are you?" The girl's eyes glowed brighter. "I told you, she said softly. "Just a weak little human girl." She clenched her fist. And suddenly, every single Krex warrior in the room collapsed, screaming. Their bodies arched unnaturally, agony twisting across their faces. Their armor cracked and crushed inward, as if an invisible force was squeezing the life out of them. Valoth watched in horror as his warriors, his finest soldiers, were reduced to broken, lifeless husks in mere seconds. The girl stepped toward him, each step slow, deliberate. His mind raced. This wasn't war. This was annihilation. He had to escape. He had to warn the others. He reached for his emergency beacon, but the girl was already there, her hand wrapped around his wrist like a vice. "You Krex thought humanity was weak," she whispered. "You thought we would beg, kneel, surrender." Valoth couldn't breathe. Her grip tightened. His bones creaked. "You were wrong." And then, darkness. Valoth's vision blurred as pain racked his massive body. The girl's iron grip tightened around his wrist, her fingers pressing into his bone like a vice. Impossible. No human should be this strong. With a primal roar of desperation, he swung his war axe, but she caught it with her bare hand. The weapon's vibroblade, capable of cutting through reinforced steel, stopped cold against her palm. Not a scratch. Valoth's yellow eyes widened in terror. The girl tilted her head slightly. Then, with an almost bored expression, she snapped the war axe in two like it was nothing more than a twig. A ripple of pure dread spread through the surviving Krex warriors. Fear was not an emotion their species knew well, but now it consumed them. "All units," Valoth choked out, pressing a command into his armor. "Kill her." Every Krex soldier left standing obeyed. They unleashed everything. Heavy plasma cannons fired. Explosive rounds detonated. Blades and energy swords slashed. The warship shook from the sheer firepower. Smoke and debris filled the air. And then, silence. A moment passed. Then another. The smoke began to clear. And she was still there, completely unharmed. She walked forward, dusting off her shoulder like she had just stepped through a gentle breeze. One Krex soldier dropped his weapon and ran. Another followed. Panic spread like wildfire. The unbreakable Krex warriors, feared conquerors of 100 worlds, were running for their lives. Valoth refused to flee. He gritted his teeth, shaking off the fear. He was a warlord, a commander. If he was to fall, he would do so fighting. Summoning every ounce of his remaining strength, he lunged at her with his full weight. She simply raised a single finger. The moment her fingertip touched his chest plate, Valoth felt his entire body explode with agony. His armor shattered outward, pieces of reinforced plating blasting away from his body, as if struck by a bomb. The sheer force hurled him backward, slamming him into the far wall of the warship's bridge. His lungs burned as he gasped for breath. He looked up, and she was already standing over him. "Please," he rasped, the taste of blood thick in his mouth. For the first time in his life, Valoth begged. She knelt down, her glowing eyes inches from his. "You should have thought of that before you laughed at us," she whispered. Valoth's heart pounded. This was not a human. This was something else. "Wait," he croaked. But it was too late. She raised her hand, and with a simple motion, Valoth's entire body collapsed inward, crushed by an unseen force. The mighty Krex warlord was gone. The bridge of the Krex warship was in ruins. Fires raged, alarms blared, and the bodies of fallen warriors lay scattered. The girl stood in the center of the destruction, untouched. She turned her gaze toward the viewports overlooking the battlefield. The remaining Krex fleet had seen what happened. They were retreating, cowards. She raised her hand. Her eyes glowed brighter, radiating an otherworldly energy. The air trembled. And then, the sky burned. An unseen force gripped the Krex warships. Metal groaned as entire battleships crumpled like paper. Explosions erupted, one after another, in a chain reaction of destruction. The once mighty Krex fleet, the armada that had conquered world after world, was annihilated in seconds. Silence fell. The girl exhaled slowly, lowering her hand. It was over. Or so she thought. A single holographic transmission flickered to life before her. It was not from the Krex. It was from someone far more dangerous. A shadowy figure appeared, their features hidden beneath a deep hood. Impressive, the voice murmured. Cold. Calculating. The girl stiffened. She knew that voice. You finally revealed yourself, the figure continued. We've been watching you for a long time. She said nothing. You think this war ends here? The figure chuckled darkly. This was just the beginning. The transmission cut out. The girl stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. A slow, cold realization settled in. The Krex weren't the true enemy. Something far worse was coming.